You're listening to the Swap Society podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Robertson. I interview thought leaders and change makers who are working to create a more sustainable and equitable world through fashion, art, and activism. Join us for a dose of climate optimism as we envision a brighter future. Hey everyone, welcome to the Swap Society podcast. Today I'm talking with Hannah Tizedes. She's an artist and sustainability educator. Welcome to the show, Hannah.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So I have to say, I've been following your work for a while. I love it so much. It's so cool. Can you please tell everyone about your art and we can show some pictures on social too and link to some of your work, but if you could just describe it for our audience.
Yeah, so basically I've been collecting plastics from mainly the Great Lakes, but also all around the world. So beaches kind of, far in between and making art with it. So a lot of little tiny colorful plastic bits and things like that.
How did you get into doing that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because my mom says nowadays, like, it's so funny. I remember you picking up things off of the floor stores, like the craft stores when you were little. So I guess I've kind of always been doing it. And I've always loved just putting things in color order and making like these beautiful kind of pieces. And not even that they'd last forever, but just having it there to look at, for a few minutes and then having it go away. So things like, flowers when I was little from the garden or from the craft store, like those fake little plastic flowers. And even organizing like my stuffed animals by color. So it's kind of always been something I have been doing, I guess.
That's so cool. Oh, and I forgot to ask, where are you talking to us from and where are you from originally?
Yeah, I am from Michigan and I'm still here. I've moved around quite a bit in the state, but I'm still here. I love the Great Lakes so much, and that's a huge part of my work.
I love that. I'm from Chicago, and so I'm very familiar with the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan in particular. I think one thing that maybe a lot of people don't realize, though, is that they're really more of inland seas, right? They're not really lakes, like little tiny lakes.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, they're huge. And I feel like anytime someone sees like a photo or a video of them, they're like, wait, are you sure that's not the ocean? And I'm like, yeah, it's the Great Lakes. Like, they're the greatest thing ever.
So I currently live in LA, and obviously we have a ton of beach trash here. I mean, I've done beach cleanups with friends. I've done them now that I have kids with my kids, and there are organizations around here that organize that. But people might be surprised to learn that the Great Lakes are also full of trash. It's not just in our oceans. Talk about that a little bit. What's the reality of what's going on in the Great Lakes region?
Yeah, so the Great Lakes region, I mean, it's super important because, first of all, they're a huge, huge source of fresh water. And I think people don't talk about it enough how much plastic pollution really is prevalent here. And there's an estimated number that 22 million pounds ends up in the Great Lakes every year, just of plastic alone. So when you really think of that number, I mean, that's crazy, right? Because there's so much in the oceans and we have all of these different estimates. But just thinking about these few lakes and that amount being in them is, I mean, pretty staggering. And let alone that was a research study done in, I think, 2016 through 2018. So, I mean, after all these years too, you've got to imagine that that's a lot more now. So it is prevalent here on, every lake shore, and you see all different types of plastic. And it's really sad. It really impacts the local communities just as much as any other, LA community or places like that too.
I know that, growing up, I had family members that would fish Lake Michigan all the time. That was just a thing that people did. I remember walking near the lake, people would be fishing always. Like there were always people fishing on the lake. I'm assuming that all of that plastic has affected the quality of the fish. I don't know if you know that much about that, but I have this memory in my mind, and it's like, when you start thinking about, it's not just the water that's being polluted, but it's the wildlife and then also the human population if they're consuming all of that when it comes to microplastic.
Definitely. And there has been a couple studies that just recently came out too with a couple of the rivers here in Michigan that lead out to the Great Lakes, obviously, and finding PFAS and all different kinds of chemicals in them. And really, that's from plastic when you look at all of the components of plastic. So it is really scary to see it affecting the food chain. And I know just going to local spots around here with rivers that lead out to the lakes and even near the lakes, there's signs that say, don't eat these certain types of fish or don't eat fish at all. And it's because of plastic and all of the chemicals that are used in plastic. So it is really sad to see that. And I mean, Michigan too, that's a huge tourist component, which brings people to Michigan in different spots to go fishing and all these things. So it's, yeah, I mean, that's devastating for local communities who get their food sources or for tourist reasons and things like that.
Hmm. Do you know where the majority of the plastics that are entering the Great Lakes is coming from?
Yeah, it's actually unique too, in a sense that the oceans, the plastic kind of moves around. It finds all these gyres and, goes in circles and things. But in the Great Lakes, most of it comes from local communities. So all the big cities that are surrounding the Great Lakes, like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Toronto, a lot of the plastic is coming straight from these cities and going into the lakes because, whatever goes into the lake just ends up staying there. So it's unique in that we know where it's coming from in a sense. Of course, there's other elements to it, like, shipping containers that are coming into the Great Lakes region, but a lot of it is local trash.
Is it being dumped into the lakes and the rivers, or is it just kind of making its way there through, storms and things like that?
Yeah, a lot of it is like storm drainage, improper sewage elements and things. There is a level of dumping always, I think, unfortunately, I wish that wasn't the case. And there also is an interesting element too of how we used to ship a lot of trash to Canada from the States and things like that. And they, suspect that a lot of that kind of ends up falling off the boat or all these mysterious things. So you just really never know. But a lot of it is just poor management, sometimes even just trash bins that have poor lids and things like that near the beach. They just end up going right into the water. So lots of different sources.
Oh, it's so overwhelming. I had a scientist from Five Gyres on the podcast not that long ago, and she actually is from Canada. She's studied the Great Lakes region in terms of its microplastics content, and now she lives out here on the West Coast, and she's, working on ocean plastics a little bit more as well, I believe. But she talked a lot about where so many of the microplastics that are in our waterways are coming from. And one of the big ones is washing our clothes. We have so many tiny little fibers from our washing machines kind of going into the waterways. Are you aware of anything going on in the Midwest right now where they're trying to deal with that at all? Or is that just still kind of this big problem that's not being addressed yet?
Yeah, a couple different things. I actually recently started working for Five Gyres, so Lisa is my coworker.
Mm.
And we've known each other for a while just with microplastics and everything too. She's amazing. But yeah, I actually am helping out with the efforts here in Michigan specifically to try to get some microplastic mitigation passed in the law right now. So we just drafted up like a bill to be approved in all these technical terms that I'm still getting to know. Um, but hopefully, our plan is to kind of mimic what's happening in California because you all over there have a really great mitigation plan going on to reduce microplastics. And you're seeing things right now with a bill that I believe just got passed to make sure that there are microfiber catchers on all of the washing machines that will be sold after a certain date. So things like that to really help forward things here in the Great Lakes would be amazing because, of course, we need that too and
Hmm.
everywhere needs it. But yeah, so it is not a thing right now here in the Great Lakes, but we're really hoping that to be a thing soon, along with things like extended producer responsibility and some other issues like that that will hopefully help mitigate the microplastic situation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when Lisa was on, we were talking a lot about the different solutions, and it does seem like the pieces that go on the washing machines are really the best options beyond,
Yeah.
any of the things that go in the machine, like the balls and even the bags, which are better than nothing. But one thing that really surprised me talking to Lisa, I've always thought about microfiber pollution in terms of microplastics, wearing synthetic clothing and having those synthetic fibers shedding. But something that she said that kind of blew my mind was that even cotton microfibers can be very polluting to our waterways because
Mm.
of how treated they are with chemicals. And that was really shocking too, because, for my guppy bag, I would always just put all the synthetic things in there. And then it's like, well, wait, but even my cotton garments are probably polluting the water. It's such a
Oh my
mess.
gosh. Same. I know. I was like, I'm doing so good. I was using the cubby bag too. I actually just got a little like microfiber situation that goes on the outside of mine and filters because mine obviously doesn't have a filter. So I'm trying that out, which is exciting. That's from Planet Care.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you think you're doing good and then you're like, no. I couldn't believe it about the cotton, but it's true. It's like everything nowadays has this like water resistant little mixture on it. And you're like, what actually is that? And now, of course, we're seeing, brands like REI just got called out for having PFAS in their stuff. And a lot of that was because of that water resistant like material that was on
Mm.
the clothing. So it's so interesting to learn more and more about it. And then, like you said, seeing how they're saying it's so efficient to have these filters on, like get them on ASAP because we really need that. I mean, it's really sad to see how much is just going into the waters on a daily basis and clothing being that huge source of it.
And I think that we really do need to put the onus on the washing machine manufacturers to make those changes because those filters that go on the outside of the machine, I mean, they can be pretty expensive. I'm renting where I'm at right now, and I do have the fortune of having a washer and dryer in my place, but it's in this tiny little nook in a hallway, and there's no room. I can't put a filter on it. Like there's nowhere to put it. Like it's like tucked into a
Definitely.
wall, and it's stacked and so and I think that though if we're really going to solve this issue, it has to be on the machines in the long run because so many people aren't going to be able to even just afford to buy that gadget, even if they care about the problem. And so
Yep.
I think that that's so cool. Yeah, I'd love to see that happen everywhere, not just in California.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you hope that it's kind of like a chain reaction once it starts. That's really what I'm hoping for. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, we need more extended producer responsibility in so many areas. I mean, plastic shouldn't be so prevalent in clothing in the first place. And we've gotten so deep into it now. It's like, how do you even, dig yourself out of that hole? And I feel like that's kind of what's happening at this huge, like just for everything with plastic pollution in general, we're just seeing so many different sources of it. And it's like, how do we start chipping away and kind of reversing everything?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's so unfortunate and it's so gross, right? I mean, even if I go for a swim, in the ocean, which I don't do that often because I am often worried that it's just not clean enough. You have to follow the beach
Hmm.
reports. There's all kinds of stuff that can be in the water, and it's so sad
Yeah.
because I think that growing up, I didn't ever think about that. It was just like
Yeah.
swimming in the open waters was a part of life, and it was such a fun part of childhood
Mhm.
for me. And it's so sad that, we have all of these other issues now created by all of the pollution. So let's get back to your art a little bit. You're so creative with the way that you put everything together. I love all of the gradients and the rainbows and all of the cool ways that you're assembling these pieces. Do you sell your pieces? Do you show them at galleries? Do you mostly use them as a way to educate people? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's kind of a variety of things, and thank you for the kind compliments. But yeah, it's a mixture of, so right now, for example, I have an installation at a local aquarium, and it's kind of more geared towards kids, but it's also just a beautiful piece to look at in general. And it's a mosaic that outlines the Great Lakes. So
Mm,
when you look at it, it looks like the Great Lakes, but you step closer and you can kind of pinpoint all these different pieces like plastic flossers and things you can identify out of your daily life that maybe you could cut out.
hmm.
So that's like an educational piece and an installation. I do a lot of pieces like that, but I also do a ton of digital work. So a lot of it that I'll create this piece for a certain campaign and then kind of just wash it away after and reuse those pieces, which I
Hmm.
really like doing that because it's sustainable. I know where those pieces are going to end up after. I don't have to worry about the piece being like thrown out or something. And a lot of that has been super fun. I mean, I've got to work with some really cool brands and organizations and things like the Surfrider Foundation, Blue Land, Pinterest, and just some really fun projects. And then yeah, I also sell prints right now. I just can't understand the whole like selling a tactical piece yet. I'm like, I don't know, like sending it in the mail, what if the pieces fall apart, things like that.
Mm,
So that would be kind of on a, limited basis, if anything. And
hmm.
then yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess.
You said that even when you were a child, you would kind of organize little things, and you would pick things up off the ground like flowers. But when did you really start doing this work?
Yeah, this work really started for me in college. I started studying environmental and sustainability studies, which was huge for me, just learning about, everything under the sun, sustainability really. And I started working at the recycling center. And all of that combined just led me to pick up more trash in my own life and on the beaches and things. So I actually ended up getting this job that took me to Portugal, and I ended up losing that job out there. And it sounds great in a sense, like, oh, you're in Europe having fun. But I really just like didn't know what to do with my life and was feeling really down. So I just started going to the beach and collecting things and would take it back to my Airbnb and just organize it, take photos, and started sharing it on Instagram. And then
Hmm.
I got home to the Great Lakes and started continuing that. And honestly, it just snowballed from there. I mean, people started like reaching out and just expressing their interest in my work and saying like they related or saw things that they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's washing up. So that's really where it all started.
Hmm. That's so cool. I mean, not cool that you lost your job, but cool that it led to, you know,
Yeah.
something really meaningful that, you've got to work on for a while. So you've studied sustainability. You obviously really care about sustainability and plastic pollution. What are some tips that you could share with our listeners about ways that they can be more sustainable or make some better choices? Obviously there's no true zero waste, and it's so hard in our society the way that it is. But what are some things that people can do if they want to have less plastic waste or just less waste in general?
Yeah, definitely. So back when I was working at the recycling center, I started doing this thing where we would go and like empty a trash bin and kind of see what was in the trash bin and kind of just help people figure out how they could create less waste. And this was for different programs at the school at the time. But I ended up taking that practice with me. And nowadays I tell people to do the same thing, like empty out, your kitchen trash or wherever it is in your home and just see what kinds of things you're throwing away because for me, a lot of the times I struggle with plastic packaging. I think all of us probably do because all of our food is basically in plastic nowadays. And for me, it was like, okay, can I maybe make like these granola bars and granola and all of these things with bulk items and buying in bigger packaging or plastic free packaging if it's available to you, and then cutting down on those things. So I think doing some kind of audit at home can be really telling. Also, in your bathroom, there's a lot of plastic there typically, like containers and things you can use up more often, or like dental floss picks if you're using them on a daily basis. Things like that really add up. So my number one is to do some kind of audit at your house for sure. And to know that not everybody is going to be like plastic free. This whole like, going zero waste and having like a jar full of trash. I remember there was a time where I was like, oh my gosh, I can only create this tiny thing of, trash, but it's just not realistic. And I think that can make it a lot easier just knowing that like everybody's kind of together on this journey. So, yeah, just do what you can with what you have wherever you are. And that's kind of that.
You mentioned the dental floss picks, and
Hmm.
one thing that we got from our children's dentist not that long ago, but it's so genius, is a reusable one of those
Oh,
where
amazing.
if you really, for people that really like to have that assistance, and I
Yeah.
think some people just need that, you can wrap floss around this
Oh,
reusable pick,
that's
and
awesome.
it's really cool. And it's like, wait, why isn't this everywhere?
A thing. Yeah,
It's so much
definitely.
more, it makes so much more sense. Um, but yeah, I mean, little things like that, or just, yeah, looking at
Yeah.
what is the most trash that you're creating,
Yes.
because a lot of our recycling isn't getting recycled either. So I think people think, oh, well, I recycle it. But that's not really a solution much anymore
Totally.
either.
Totally. Especially with those small, like little objects and things too. Like I always tell people when I was working at a recycling center at school for a while, and they always said, don't recycle anything smaller than a tennis ball. And that was like a rule that I've taken with me because even, yeah, going back to the dental floss picks, like some people really do think, oh, these are plastic, like I can recycle them. Like, it's never gonna make it there. Like it is a great thought, and that's amazing, but it's just not going to happen. So yeah, I think just learning more about that kind of stuff too is really helpful. And with recycling, like going and looking at your local recycling laws, for the lack of better term. I can't think of what they're called, but just looking at things like that, the do's and don'ts, and really knowing
Hmm.
what's happening in your community. And then, yeah, like the little things too. I find a lot of like plastic tampon applicators at the beach and things like that. So if you can cut back on those little things that are ending up in our waterways, I think that's huge.
I love the visual of nothing smaller than a tennis ball because I think often people are like, nothing smaller than 3 inches, which I think can be hard to visualize for a lot of people. So that's so great. But yeah, the reason that those smaller things can't be recycled is that they fall through the holes of the belts that move the products for sorting. And so
Hmm.
yeah, anything really tiny, it's definitely not getting recycled. I know that
Totally.
sometimes there are collection places that can do that, but again, it's so hard, I think, for the average person to figure that out or to
Yeah.
pay. I remember I looked into one of those once and it's like, oh, that's so expensive to get one of those recycling boxes.
Yeah. Yeah, like the TerraCycle or things
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We have a local store that thankfully does it. But even then, I'll be honest, I don't take advantage of it all the time. Like it's just such a, like sometimes you forget that you even have that locally, or yeah, it can be expensive. And that's probably pretty rare to have in your community at all. So yeah.
Oh, so many things to think about. So, what are the main things that you've personally done in your life to become more sustainable over the years?
Yeah, I think that shopping more mindfully has been huge for me. Like I've tried this practice where anytime I want like a new clothing article or something like that, I'll go online first and check like all of the places I know to find secondhand options or yeah, mostly that. So like Poshmark and things like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'll find them sometimes. Like I'll be looking for this one specific thing and I'll find it and it's like amazing because I have to pay like half of the price or something. So that's always a win and something I just try to do more. And even looking on like Facebook Marketplace locally and finding ways to swap. I'm also part of my local Buy Nothing group, which has been really awesome. So just being more mindful about the things I'm bringing into my home and also the way that I'm getting rid of them too, because now that I've learned that, thrift, sending things to the thrift shop or things like that isn't always the best. Um, so yeah, I think that's a huge one for me.
That's amazing. Yeah. And for those of you who are unaware of why sending things to the thrift shop is not the best, less than 20% of what we donate to our thrift shops gets resold. And much of it winds up in landfills or being incinerated. Or when it comes to clothing, it often gets baled up and shipped overseas to countries in the global south where it's decimating local communities. There are places I've seen footage of these beaches in Ghana where there's just tons of our discarded clothing washing up on their beaches, and I mean, it's just overwhelming. Or, you know, in in the Atacama Desert, it's like there's like a mountain of, discarded clothes. I mean, we are
Hmm.
just living in this really unsustainable, unhealthy way for our planet and for ourselves ultimately by having this disposable mindset and just throwing everything away
Hmm.
or tossing everything at the thrift shop. I
Yeah.
love that you mentioned the Buy Nothing group. I am an avid Buy Nothing person. Yeah, what's the Buy Nothing vibe out there in the Michigan area?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good just because it's a pretty small group. I think probably compared to like an LA Buy Nothing group, I would assume, just because there tends to be more eco-conscious people in those areas. But yeah, I mean, there's some great things and even like random things. Like the other month, me and my friends wanted to do some collaging. So I reached out on the Buy Nothing group and was like, hey, does anyone have any like old National Geographic magazines or anything like that? And a woman gave me this massive tote bag full of them. And I was like, this is amazing. We had so much fun just like going through these old magazines and cutting things out. So there can be random things like that, but you can also get like a couch randomly or, a cooking item that you might need or things like that. So I love mine.
It's so great. It really has changed the way that I deal with the things that I don't want anymore because sometimes things just don't sell, even if you try to sell them, or it's not really sellable. You're kind of like, oh, nobody's going to buy this, but I bet someone would want it. And so I hardly donate to the thrift shop at all anymore, but I used to do it a lot. So
Me
I've
too.
really changed my habits in that respect. And it feels so good to know that it's like, oh, I'm done with this thing and somebody else is going to use it instead of it probably winding up in the trash somewhere. So I love that. How
Absolutely.
many people are in your, I'm just curious because you mentioned group size. How many people are in your
Yeah.
local group?
Well, for example, I live in a city right now, which like I would consider small, and there's five different groups for like the different sides of the
Hmm.
city. I don't know if that's how it typically is, but the one I used to be a part of wasn't.
Okay.
But this one has about 400 people in it, which felt small.
There are so many groups in LA, and even in my neighborhood, they call it sprouting. When,
Okay.
there's like a parameter where they recommend once a group reaches a certain size that it should
Okay.
sprout so that it stays small and local. But it's been very contentious. So I live in a neighborhood of LA where our group split in two, and people, it's been about a year, I think, but people still complain about it. But it's true. When it was bigger, there were more people that would jump in and want things, so then it kind of
Yeah.
like changed the vibe a little bit when it got smaller. I understand why they did it, but our group,
Yeah.
I think it was like reaching like 2,000 people or something just for our
Okay.
neighborhood for perspective, and then they like chopped it up,
Yeah.
and now our group, I don't know what the current number is, but yeah, it's an interesting experiment, I think, socially too, of just meeting other people. I tell people about it all the time.
Me
Everyone should
too. No one
experience it.
knows. I'm always amazed that no one, yeah, around here knows really. So yeah, it's always great to share it. And honestly, I'm a big fan of Facebook Marketplace too. Like I actually just got a couch on there today, and it's
Hmm,
this like bright green couch that has like a washable cover on it. And I was like, this is great. I got it for $50. I was
nice.
like, okay. But
I
just
love
like
it.
finding furniture and things like that because I just don't want to go buy like a brand new couch knowing that there's so many out there that like need a home.
Yeah, I have gotten furniture from the Buy Nothing group. I've also gotten furniture from
Cool.
Facebook Marketplace. I've gotten stuff off the side of the road. I
Yes.
I really try not to buy stuff unless I absolutely have to, because
Yeah.
if you're patient and you're not in a big rush, you can usually find almost exactly what you're looking for. There was a West Elm couch that we really liked, and we needed to get a new couch, unfortunately. Long story that I won't get into, but we had like this amazing couch from the Buy Nothing group, but then we had to get rid of it. It was like, oh, okay, so that's how much it is new. I found the exact couch on Facebook Marketplace for half
Ah,
the
that's
price.
amazing.
And it's like, it wasn't a $50 couch, but it was
Yeah.
much less expensive than if we had gone to the shop and bought it there or ordered it. And it's like, that is so much better for the environment. I know that living in cities, like, I don't know how it is in your area, but like living in LA, people put giant pieces of furniture out on the side of the road all the
Oh my
time. It's
gosh.
so bizarre. But I just think about that all the time. It's like, if someone like me doesn't buy that used couch, then it's going to wind up on the curb, and then it's going to wind
Yeah.
up with large item trash pickup, and it's going to be destroyed and in a landfill somewhere. So,
Oh my gosh, totally. I mean, yeah, I think about that all the time too. And here, people sometimes do it at the worst time, though, in Detroit, where they'll like leave things out in the winter. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Or like in the rain, I'm like, just wait until a sunny day. But yeah, I see furniture all the time here too. I don't think as much as you probably do, though. I was recently in San Francisco and could not believe how much furniture people were putting out. My uncle explained to me, he was like, well, yeah, because people here like it's so expensive to like get a truck and there's so limited trucks to do moving, I guess, that like people will just like start piling things up on the side of the street and like fit whatever they can in their car and then leave. And I'm like, what? That's crazy. And I was also raised like by parents who would try to sell everything when they were getting rid of it to make some extra money. So
yeah.
I just grew up with that mindset of like, let me try to make some money off of this at the same time if I'm getting rid of it. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting what people will do with things that have value in some kind of way.
Yeah, I think part of it comes down to time constraints too, though, right? I mean, it really does take time. If you want to sell something, whether it's in your local community or online, it takes time. You have to do the photos and you have to create the
Yeah.
listing and you have to communicate with the potential buyers. And I take the time to do stuff like that, but I understand that like some people might not feel like they have the time to do it. So I always love a good fashion love story. It sounds like you already shop
Ooh.
secondhand, but secondhand or not, do you have a favorite piece in your closet? What is it? What do you love about it?
Oh my gosh, this is so hard for me because there's definitely a few. I'm obsessed with the color green. And I have a couple green things like this one basic like green pullover that I wear all the time. It's, it was thrifted and it's just my favorite. Like it's extra cozy, I swear, because I thrifted it. And I also have some like jewelry pieces that I've thrifted. Almost all of my jewelry has been thrifted because when I caught on that you could find good jewelry at like thrift stores and things like that or secondhand, I was like, wait a minute, this is where all like the good stuff from like older women who must have just like came and donated all their good stuff. So I have some jewelry pieces that I love too. And then I have this one like little purse sometimes that I'll bring with me that was like hand embroidered. And it's beautiful and it's one of a kind, I think. It looks like and I love that too. So it's just finding like those one of a kind pieces for me.
That's one of the most fun things I think about secondhand personally is that, I don't necessarily want to walk into a room and have the same exact outfit on as someone else. It kind of guarantees that it'll be more unique, even if it's
Yeah.
classic, and not kind of wild and
Yeah.
out there. Yeah. And then you feel like you have this connection to it and this story that
Yeah.
you wouldn't otherwise have. So that's really cool. I love that. Have you always loved the color green? Has that always been a
Oh,
favorite
yes.
color?
Yeah, green and yellow. I don't know what about them, but I just love them. I feel like they're happy colors.
Yeah, no, I have a son whose favorite color is green to the point where like he's he's branching out a little bit, but for a lot of his life he would only wear green. He had green
Oh.
glasses. I had to buy all green clothes. Like if it wasn't green, he didn't want to wear it. And now he's getting more into from like that bright grass green, which was like what he loved
Yeah.
when he was little, to now he's into camo because it's
Oh.
lots of different shades of green. He has like everything
Yeah.
camo right now. And it's like,
That's so awesome. Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
yeah. Green's a good color.
So he'll probably love it forever, I guess, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So what's inspiring you right now?
Yeah, honestly, the change in season, like just knowing that spring is here makes me happy because if you've ever been to the Midwest, you know that everything gets really gray, especially here in Michigan, and there's nothing on the trees, the grass is kind of a dull color. So it's funny, we've been on like the freeway because we're actually in the process of moving right now. So every day when we go on the freeway and like move more stuff, we're like, oh my gosh, the sides of the freeway are green. It's so exciting. So that's been really, really inspiring lately.
Oh, that's such a good feeling. I remember that. I mean, I live in LA now, so obviously it's a little bit different here, but I remember, there would be 3 months of the year where nobody socialized and people just kind of worked and went home and, there you didn't even
Yeah.
really see people that much because it was just so miserable out. And then the weather starts to turn and it's this euphoric feeling.
Yeah. Everybody's outside, like everybody wants to do things. There's more events coming up and it's just such a good time of the year, like specifically here too, because everybody wants to like go to the lakes. And I actually recently founded a nonprofit and we've been doing beach cleanups. And we just had our first couple, and it was so fun to have everyone down at the beach because everybody was so excited. They were like, it's so warm out. Like, and Michigan people are like, it's 40 degrees out, and we're like ripping off our layers, and we're like, no coat, like I can go barefoot in the sand. And it's like, just the best time ever. So it was great just to like have that community moment where everybody's just in awe of like the earth.
Yeah, that's so fun. It's funny because living in LA for so long, it's like, and my husband's from the East Coast. So, I mean, we know
Okay.
the four seasons very, very well. But now that we've lived here for so long, we've adapted to this climate. And so we get cold so easily. But when it's kind of chilly here, it's like you can see the locals versus the tourists because it's like
Yeah.
we'll be bundled up in like Patagonia jackets and sweaters and hats, and then there you'll see people walking around in shorts and a t-shirt, and it's like, oh yeah, they live in a cold place, and this feels warm to them.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. I know. The other day I looked outside and my neighbor was in shorts and a t-shirt and it was literally definitely under 50 degrees, like in the 40s. And I was like, okay, we're in Michigan.
Oh, I love it. That's so fun. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people have climate anxiety these days, especially when you keep seeing all of these dire reports coming out, like the most recent IPCC report. What's keeping you feeling optimistic about the future, considering kind of this monumental problem that we have to face?
Yeah, I mean, I think that climate anxiety and eco anxiety are all just such a real thing. And I think just like connecting on that alone can be really hopeful. And just getting involved with community has been huge for me because I feel like for a while there, I was like someone kind of championing it all alone and felt, like I was just kind of doing it from my couch almost for lack of better like understanding. And then like just getting involved more with my local community and like having these conversations with people about how I was feeling and realizing that they felt the exact same way. And then being able to do things like this nonprofit that I have now, we're doing beach cleanups and I'm connecting with more people. And it's just really great to have that. So I think community is huge for me. And realizing that everybody within these little communities has such a different role. There's people from like all sorts of different backgrounds. There's high schoolers that are just interested in like the environment and, want to just come out and do that. Or there's people that have like engineering backgrounds or like stay-at-home moms and all different sorts of people. And I think it's so cool to see that like everybody truly has their own unique impact in all of it. And so I think that is hopeful for me.
I love that perspective. I think actually a lot of people have a similar answer in the sense that community is really kind of the antidote to climate anxiety.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that if you don't feel like you're alone, I think that sometimes it can feel like, oh, why don't more people care about these issues? Why are
yeah,
people fighting the progress that we need to make to kind of tackle these
totally.
things? And maybe part of it is a messaging problem too. And I think that's part of what I love about your art so much is that I don't think that anybody wants old tampon applicators and teeth flossers in the water with them while they're out swimming having a day like with their
Yeah.
family, right? So I think that it's like, oh yeah, this is what we're talking about when we're talking
Yep.
about pollution in particular. It's like we don't want this. Like we want clean
Hmm.
waterways. We want clean water to drink. We want clean water to swim in, to bathe in. We want, for people that eat seafood, they probably don't want it
Hmm.
to be riddled with and full of microplastics. So
Yeah, totally. I mean, that has been a true, just like huge part of hope for me, is seeing that it doesn't matter your background, like you can really be on either side of it. And I know we tend to get this narrative of, there's only one side fighting for the climate. And I just think that when you kind of like map everyone out as a whole, like it's really just not true. I think there's a lot of people from all different types of backgrounds. And of course, it can be true in a lot of the cases we do see. But as an example, here in Michigan, we had like some kind of climate roundtable happen and there were people from all Republicans, Democrats, independents, everybody, and they all came together and they were like, look, we got to change this because Michigan, for all sorts of reasons, the tourist aspect, the local aspect, there's so many different reasons, and most people care about all those reasons. Like you said, people don't want to be eating fish that have microplastics on them, and all of these like plastic components end up leading back to climate change. So I think there's just a lot of connectors, and I
mhm.
think that those like connectors are what are like the hope of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it so much. Well, so how can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me online. I go by the Trashy Collection on Instagram. My website's also thetrashycollection.com. And then yeah, that's the main place.
Very cool. Well, anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
If you're in Michigan, I'll be doing a lot of cleanups this spring and summer, so come join if you're local.
I love it. That's so great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
story, talking about your super cool art, and I loved hearing what's keeping you feeling optimistic. It's really inspiring. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole. It's so great to connect with people who just get it.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Swap Society podcast. Swap Society is an online clothing swap for women and kids that makes it easy and affordable to mix up your wardrobe sustainably. We're a growing community of women across the USA who are creating positive change by swapping our clothes and slowing down our fashion consumption. We would love to swap with you. If you're interested in joining, you can sign up at our website. Learn more at www.swapsociety.co. That's swapsociety.co. You can find the show notes for each episode on our website. Please get in touch with us on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for the video version of this podcast at Swap Society. Music is by Joel Korlitz and yours truly. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please help us spread the word by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, sharing on social media, or simply telling a friend. We really appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day, and remember to swap before you shop.